Well, a recent decision by the Supreme Court affects your rights if you're being questioned by a police officer. The nation's highest court ruled that body language and remaining silent before an arrest and even before Miranda rights are read can be used against you unless you specifically call for the Fifth Amendment privilege. And joining us now is Paul Harding from Martin, Harding and Mazzotti. And Paul, good to have you with us today. Tell us a little bit about how this Supreme Court ruling has changed the law.
Yeah, it has changed it significantly. It really has. Again, just to put it in frame, this is prior to arrest. This is when the police maybe just stop in and ask you a few questions. And what happened to Mr. Salinas in Texas was just that. They asked him some questions, and when they got to what we'll call the $100,000 question, or the question regarding did you commit the crime, in this case it was murder, he said nothing, nor did he say I want to plead my Fifth Amendment rights. And at trial, that silence was used against him and he was convicted.
And how did the Supreme Court use that particular case then to make its decision?
Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting that the Supreme Court came down with a 5-4 opinion. And the opinion said this. It said, you know, a reasonable person who's asked that question would have done something other than be silent. They would have said, I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. Or they would have had the wherewithal to say, I'm going to plead the Fifth Amendment. So the Supreme Court upheld it, and now it is the law of the land.
And I'm guessing, you know, if you're the suspect, though, you're in a tough spot right now because you either got to plead the Fifth or suppose that your silence is going to be used against you at trial.
You know, and they both kind of work against you because the police come to talk to you. They'll start out with a question. They'll say, hi, Paul, how are you? And nice to get small chat, and then they'll get to the actual question, right? So by you just saying at that moment, they ask you about a crime, and you say, I plead the Fifth, at that moment, you're sort of sending the message that you did something, or at least it feels like you're sending the message that you did something wrong. So I think under both scenarios, whether you're pleading the Fifth, as you're supposed to be able to do, and most people don't even know how to do that, or a lot of people don't, or if you don't just jump up and say, I didn't do it, you put yourself in a vulnerable position.
I would say. What is the law here in New York right now?
Well, the law was the way it was throughout most of the country, which was that your silence wasn't going to work against you. There were an exception if you were a public official and you had a duty to speak, but as a general proposition, saying nothing could not be used at a subsequent trial. And again, the prosecutors are doing this. They're saying, well, you know, the police spoke to Mr. X on that day, and when asked about the crime, Mr. X became fidgety. He didn't answer the question. What do you think about that, jurors? And of course, it just looks bad.
Yeah, it is fascinating, though, for sure.
Sure is.
Well, thank you very much for your input today. And if anybody out there has a question for Paul, you can email them to whatareyourrights@cbs6albany.com. We'll look forward to talking again next week, Paul. Thank you. And Nick will be along with the weather right after the break.
CBS 6 News, the Weather Authority.
I talked to one person today who said today's weather was like a breath of fresh air. I agree. I think it's pretty nice outside. The humidity has dropped. And in general, we've got a pretty pleasant day across the area. Temperatures today are a little bit below average. 78 degrees this afternoon, dropping through the 60s and into the 50s eventually. Tonight is going to be brisk in spots. Certainly significantly cooler tonight than what we've seen recently. You'll notice that difference tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, right now, 66, the temperature in Rutland, 76. The temperature in Glens Falls, it's 74. Right now in Albany, 75 degrees in Poughkeepsie. A little cooler than we have been recently, and we've got a bit of a breeze out there as well. Winds, not overly windy, not windy enough to cause any real problems, but you'll probably notice that breeze out there at about 10 to 20 miles per hour right now in Albany with a 13-mile-per-hour wind. The wind speed in Glens Falls, 10 in Pittsfield, and a 17-mile-per-hour wind right now in Rome. Yeah, in general, the winds today at about 10 to 20 miles per hour. As we head through the afternoon, if you got up early enough, you might have seen a couple of showers associated with a cold front. Most of the day, though, today has been dry. And from here on out, we've got a couple of days of dry weather ahead of us. Not likely to be seeing any showers tonight or tomorrow. It's going to be a while before we see that rain returning. This is the system that came through yesterday. Yesterday, we were dealing with the warm front side of things. Today, it's the cold front. But this cold front crossing with very little fanfare. Not seeing many showers, no lightning or thunder either. What it is doing is actually dropping our humidity, and we're seeing those dew points falling as we head through the day. We started the day a little muggy, but now the dew points have been falling into the 50s, and you can probably feel that difference in the air when you step outside. Forecast for today, mid to upper 70s. Forecast for tomorrow, mid to upper 70s. 77 degrees tomorrow in Glens Falls, similar to what we see today. Mid 70s for Rutland, Manchester, about 75 in Bennington, 78 in Schenectady. Winds tomorrow, though, not as breezy as today. Today they're at about 10 to 20. Tomorrow's winds, north-northwest, about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Plenty of sunshine and low humidity for tomorrow. Similar to today, the only difference is tomorrow we're going to see more sunshine and less wind. Nice. 80 in Hudson for tomorrow, 81 in Kingston, about 78 degrees in Albany. This is still a little bit below average. The normal high, 83. And today and tomorrow we look to be staying a little bit below that. So how long will we be seeing the cooler weather? Good weather for mowing the lawn. I know I'm not the only person whose lawn is exploding. Maybe not the best beach weather today and tomorrow, but for those of you who are looking for warmer weather, well, you won't be waiting long. Friday, Saturday, we're back in the 80s both days. Look to be staying dry. In fact, our next real chance for rain won't be moving in until Sunday. That's when a cold front will approach from the west, and it does look like widespread showers. Thunderstorms will be likely for the second half of the weekend. But Saturday, still looking pretty good, and it's not going to last long. Monday, Tuesday, back to pleasant, dry conditions. Liz?
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Nick. And we will be back with Mr. Food's Test Kitchen right after the break.